continue the conversation with Q&A. And no one here, obviously, is Twitter savvy. So, but does anyone have a question? And I'll repeat it for the cameras.
So I'm pregnant with our first child.
Congrats.
Who is a girl. And,
yeah.
Though I don't have the same struggles because I'm white, we think about these things for our little girl, right? Same sort of stuff. Like how can, I mean, I have brown hair and I always saw blonde, princesses. And when I think of pretty, the first pretty is blonde, right? Not like me, not brown hair. So we think about these things too. And I feel like I could ask you a million questions, but I actually was wondering if there were some books in particular that you loved, that you found for your girls online, or if you had a good resource for really, because we want to conscientiously expose our child to all sorts of, books and movies and cartoons and stuff too. So, but I feel like it's something that we, regardless of your race, have to work towards, so that we don't end up in a divisive world. So, but specifically, if you had, I'm curious about, this is a selfish question, but, any particular recommendations for like good resources for books like that, or cartoons that you loved that were less Disney?
Okay, so breaking those stereotypes, what are books, videos, any children's materials that you can that you can recommend for her to look into?
Okay, there's a website called We Need Diverse Books. And there's a lot of great resources in there to find like really good diverse books out there. One of the books that I really loved that we got a few years ago was and is now incredibly relevant. It's called Grace for President, and it's a little black girl. She's in her history class at school, and she looks at all the presidents and notices that it's all men, and she's like, where are all the girls? So she decides she's going to run for class president. And it ends with her actually becoming the president of the United States. And I was hoping by now that it would be kind of irrelevant, but apparently not. So that's one of my favorites. There's the Princess Truly series, the Lottie Paris series. There's a series called Katie Fry Private Eye. That's it's a little black girl who's like a detective, kind of like Nancy Drew. There's one that I really like, even though it's still a little blonde princess. It's The Princess in Black, and it's a princess who sneaks out at night and she dresses up kind of like Zorro and goes out and fights monsters. Like, I really love that one because, we're dealing with intersectionality, with having little girls, and so I'm constantly looking for a kind of girl power images and of women. Doc McStuffin is a really good one. It's a little black girl who is a doctor for toys. And the new version is now that she has her own hospital, and she's basically the attending physician, and all of her toys are the residents. So it's basically it's like little kids' Grey's Anatomy. So that's another one that I love. For older kids, I actually, believe it or not, Monster High is a pretty good show for like, my kids are at that age. You probably have about 6-7 years before your kids are at that age. But the thing that I love about Monster High, like, it's, well, first of all, everybody's kind of pink and purple and blue and stuff like that, so it kind of relieves that tension. And then they deal with these issues, but they deal with it in a bit of a subtler way. So it might be, prejudice of humans versus monsters, or prejudice of vampires versus werewolves. And in the end, it always ends with this very positive message about, accepting each other's differences and stuff like that. So, yeah, Monster High is, a lot of people are surprised when I say that, but Monster High is one of the better ones. Of course, Dora. Yeah, those are the ones I can think about.
Any other questions? Yes.
So, I can hear that your girls are such a huge inspiration for you. And I'm still young, I'm not in a
they talk you out of that?
I don't know, it's something I've always been really, really drawn to. And like, I just had this little thought in my head that like, oh my god, I would be, I don't know, like, I see them, these potential future children, maybe, you know, as like such a good source of motivation for things that I do. And sometimes like I have like a lack of motivation to do things just for me, does that make sense? And so I guess my question is like, before you had these beautiful sources of inspiration in your life, what really kind of motivated you in your work?
Okay, so before your wonderful girls came into this world, what were your other inspirations?
Before my girls, it was pretty much just me being a giant nerd and still wanting to do superheroes and like dragons and wizards and stuff like that. And so a lot of my work pre my daughters was like little comic books of vampires versus werewolves and Lord of the Rings, which is much as I complain about it being so European. I love Lord of the Rings, though I do think that the old Rankin and Bass cartoon version of The Hobbit is the definitive version. So yeah, it was just me being super nerdy, and you know, when I was younger, I kind of gave up on doing that because, and then I got to a point where I was old enough to say, you know, screw you guys if you don't think this is real art. This is what I like, so I'm going to do it.
Okay, we have a Twitter question. You guys are savvy after all. From at @IamSkyMedia. Hasani mentioned he had naysayers when he started his fairy series. How did he shut them up, and what kept him going?
I think by then, because I was older, you know, I'm kind of a lot of the kids that I'm in grad school with now, they're younger, you know, 20-somethings, and I'm 39. And you get to a point where you get enough confidence to kind of stand up for what you like, and that comment actually came from a professor at my grad school, and I just sort of brushed it off like, whatever, I'm doing what I'm doing.
Any other questions?
Yes. Quick question. So this is a little less selfish than your question. So I have 27 babies. I'm a second grade school teacher.
My heart literally jumped.
I look good, right?
You look great.
And so I'm thinking about ways, you know, 27 very beautiful, very bright, albeit very crazy, you know, 7 and 8 year old Black children living in inner city Baltimore. What are some, if you know, of any sort of art enrichment activities or resources that would help them become able to start expressing themselves artistically while representing themselves? So getting them into that mindset of creating art that looks like them and out of that stereotypical.
So are you a teacher?
Yes.
Okay, so as a teacher with 27 wonderful young students, what would you recommend as outlets for them to kind of engage into their artistic spirit?
Are you available?
I am available.
Okay.
My schedule's a little tight, but I am available, yes.
He's available.
But also in the city, I know there's Baltimore Youth Arts. I'm not sure, they work mostly with teenagers, but I'm not sure if they also work with younger kids. The Downtown Cultural Arts Center, I think they have an art program there. And then I think it's just sort of really taking the time to go seek out books, and particularly like at a certain age, comic books becomes a big thing. And kind of seeking out the books that represent them as much as possible. And you have to do a lot of digging, but they're out there. And the other thing too is that they might not be on the shelves, but there are, because of self-publishing and e-publishing and stuff like that, there are independent publishers and people self-publishing that are putting out this kind of material, and it's on you to kind of seek them out wherever you can find them and make it available for them. Yeah, so again, like, We Need Diverse Books is a great resource for just finding like good books. And another good one, I'm gonna do a plug for like a webcomic that my daughter really loves called Princess Love Pond. It's a webcomic manga with a little black princess she's kind of like Sailor Moon, except she's black and she's short and she's a little stout. And it's kind of awesome.
I second both review thoughts. Gianna Rodriguez is great. She's an artist here. I think they deal with the vast age groups of children throughout the city, west, east side, all over. So, and they also help with business side. They kind of teach you, there's the creative side, but then there's also the business side. If you value your work and you think that there's money, it should be paid, commission to do work. They also teach that too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
First of all, St. Vincent and Grenadines in the house. First of all, I get excited when I hear people of the Caribbean because I was born in Washington D.C. I have family in the Caribbean, and I want to take you back to St. Kitts. And even though they discourage you in art, I'm wondering if there were any influences that got you to this point in arts, whether it be storytelling or whatever. Was that a part of your experience early on in St. Kitts?
So taking it back. Taking it back.
Even though they discouraged you from art, I'm just wondering if there was something in there that gave you that spark.
Okay, so taking it back to you growing up in St. Kitts. Despite discouragements or the stereotypes of being an immigrant, did anything spark your interest there in art?
I think for me, it's like I said, I was super nerdy and I was really into comic books. And there was one comic books place that sold comic books in the entire island. It was at the airport, about a 5-mile walk. Nobody would drive me to the airport, so I had to walk. And I think just from going through like that trek every week to go buy my comic books, a certain amount of determination kind of instilled in me. And like, I did keep drawing like as a hobby, but it started there, but it wasn't until years and years later where I actually kind of had the strength to kind of step away from a law career and actually try and do something that I loved for once.
I guess I wonder if there was storytelling involved at all in your upbringing, because I know my experience in the Caribbean, very
storytelling was always there.
Yeah.
And my father, R.I.P., he just passed in January, but I know man could chat. He would talk and he just talk your ear off, and then so many stories, and he could pretty much tell you the whole history of every estate on the island and which one was the first one to get rid of slavery and which one had the first slave revolt and stuff like that. And so I think that translated more into me writing, because I do a little bit of writing, and it translated into how I tend to tell stories in a voice that is perhaps a little more not so formal.
Thank
you. Sort of a commentary question thing. When I was growing up, when I was in elementary school, in second grade, I had a Jackson 5 lunchbox. And the school that I attended was primarily Caucasian. And there were countless times when I was sort of chided or called out for the fact that I had a lunchbox featuring a black family. I was raised in a way that I saw people. I didn't see people as white or black or Asian or Latin. We were people. As I got older and became more involved in the world at large, the prejudices and the bigotry and everything else that exists to this day became increasingly apparent, with sort of the void for young people of varied ethnicities to see themselves portrayed in various forms of media, whether it's print or animation or even television. You know, there's a new show on one of the networks called Pitch, which features a young black woman who is an amazing pitcher. Once again, it ties into the athleticism, which is a branch of stereotyping. The Baltimore Book Festival happens every year, and it's a pretty big deal. So I was wondering, do you think to advance this whole genre and the practice of what you're doing and what we need really desperately in our world today, that there'd be an opportunity to put something together for that? Because we live in a city where, you know, I think the demographic exists where people would come and support it. And, you know, would it be possible to get people like yourself and other writers and artists who are trying to create these experiences and these fantasies for young people to which they can personally relate, where they can then take pride in depicting themselves wearing the cape or, you know, doing the great deed?
Okay, so do you think there is a possibility for there to be an outlet, whatever that would be, for, I guess, to have, kind of cater to this work that you do and similar work around that, that people can go to and also showcase their work, feel accepted, and so on and so forth, correct?
I mean, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, it's a matter of sort of doing the legwork and organizing it, but there are people out there all over the place, like in this city, and there's a guy in Atlanta named Milton Davis who has a small publisher called MV Media who does a whole line of Black fantasy, African fantasy, and also he started doing children's books too. There's, what's his name? Bill Campbell, who I think is in PG County, that runs Rosarium Press. That is like a great resource for particularly comic books that are diverse. And it's just a matter of sort of, we're all like, I'm Facebook friends with them, and I've done business with, like I've done drawings and stuff for them. But there's like, we never actually met, but there's this network of people online who are doing this kind of work, and so it's just a matter of doing the legwork to bring them all into one place. And it would be pretty awesome if we could do that here in Baltimore.
I mean, I think it would be an incredible opportunity to bring attention and exposure to the issue, but also to the people who are trying to change the scenario and make it more inclusive and make it more realistic for the world in which we're living. You know, there's been an absence of that for my lifetime. You know, I'm 54 years old, and I'm still seeing things, you know, I see television shows produced by Tyler Perry that, to me, are just the modern day version of the blaxploitation programs of the 70s. You know, they're not representing real people, they're kind of caricaturized. And we need more realistic depictions of people, of every ethnicity, of every demographic in our society.
Last question.
So, one of the reasons why I wanted to come to this series, and besides the fact that I'm totally not an early bird, and I always forget what they are.
Thank you for coming, then. Congrats.
Was the idea of fantasy, and even though I'm a web designer, and my clients are like, they come from all over. They could be in the beauty industry, they could be an accountant, they could be whatever. But for my own personal brand, I always have wanted to integrate this whole science fiction part because I'm kind of a, like a, I guess a geek in a way too, love Orphan Black, love Aeon Flux and She's Out, this stuff and all that. And I recently decided to start infusing more of that into my brand, even though, I'm not going to say even though, that's part of my question, but just started infusing more into my brand and say, okay, well, this is how I'm doing what I'm doing. If you will hire me, I'm not going to, I guess my question is, how can I infuse, do you have any advice for infusing like a fantasy mindset into other aspects of people's discipline, whether they, do graphic design or, like web design or just other art outlets or whatever?
Wait, I forgot your question.
It's just overall advice for how to infuse fantasy and other aspects of people's talents, artistic talents.
So how do you infuse fantasy, the work that you do, I guess the message around that in other disciplines in the creative community?
I think it's about taking the expansive view of fantasy. So not just sort of typical medieval swords and wizards and stuff like that, but then like what you're talking about is basically Afrofuturism, which is black sci-fi, and that can take any number of forms. I've seen people that will integrate sort of designs of rockets and like starscapes into their graphic design. And I've seen people like there's this whole the steampunk genre, the subgenre. There's a whole other movement called steampunk. And you can take that sort of Victorian steam aesthetic of all the gears and the pipes and the pistons and sort of integrate it into your basic design. I've seen some pretty cool animated work where it's the web page pops up and then you just see the gear turn and stuff like that. It's like, even if it's not right in your face, you can bring it in there in very subtle ways that it's kind of hitting people in their subconscious.
All right, can we give another round of applause?